FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships with our upgrading commander build video on this Wednesday. So this has been, I pushed this off from doing it this past weekend, so that's why we're doing it today as a feature of the ship yesterday. That battle will be at the end of this video, as well as another battle where I picked up a solo warrior with the Brindisi. It's just a phenomenal tier 9 cruiser, and I just cannot get enough of this ship. Pay no attention to the commander. I had Sansonetti on the Brindisi, but I since have moved him off to Venezia, and I wanted to put a 0-point commander on just to be able to go through and pick out different builds, because there's a lot of different possibilities, I think, from Brindisi compared to a lot of other tier 9 cruisers, I think, in terms of her build capacity. So first, we're going to go over the type of playstyle of this ship, look at the armor, look at the modules, upgrades, combat signals, and then get into the commander build. And all those will be time marked at the bottom of this video if you just simply want to skip to a part that fancies you. So, in talking about the Brindisi, what type of tier 9 cruiser is this? Is she a brawler? Is she a medium range cruiser, like the 12 kilometers roughly? Or is she a long range cruiser? And honestly, I think Brindisi does alright in any of those three categories. I think she plays the best at the mid-ranges, so like roughly 12 kilometers and above. But when you find situations where you can really push in, maybe you catch a destroyer off guard, an enemy cruiser, or even a battleship, you can definitely do that in Brindisi. And you can't say that a lot about a lot of other tier 9 tech tree cruisers in the game. So I think why I like Brindisi so much is that she has a very flexible play style, and that will also reflect in the build as we go over the ship. So in terms of her armor, so her bow and stern have 25mm, and then you can see on the bottom there's a few things going on back here. You have 120mm to 100 to 50, and then we go to the front here, it's all 50. So actually, when this ship, you play quite well in kiting, and it helps a little bit just to have that additional armor on the back side here. However, when you're looking at the ship as a whole, you know, the nose is quite long and a much larger sizable target than the stern. So that's one of the reasons why it's kind of nice when you can just kite away with Brindisi, especially that she has the 30mm deck plating and 27mm up here on the forward part. So you can kind of see she favors a little bit more of a kiting playstyle, especially if you have brawling battleships or your enemy team's pushing on a flank and you're kiting away, then Brindisi works out quite well for that. Now, as I referenced in yesterday's video, I was talking a little bit about her armor belt. So it's 27mm up here on kind of auxiliary room armor, and then it goes down to a 30mm, which means you're going to be getting to bounce some of the more moderate battleship sized guns in the game, and particularly you get down to the 150. Now, I think I may have misspoken yesterday in terms of the WoW's wiki article. I think they messed up. I think they put 50mm, and the armor belt is actually 150mm, so I do apologize for saying that incorrectly in yesterday's video. But this 150mm belt is very trollish, especially when you're angling in to get your torpedoes off, which you need to pull those up here. So you're running up on the target, and then the battleship's trying to shoot, down here as he's angled like this way, roughly. It's just going to bounce if he's trying to go that low. It'd be better if actually try to punch through the nose into the citadel, as an example. So that belt armor allows you to get away with a lot, especially when you YOLO targets and you dump your torpedoes in, which we'll talk about that a little bit more when the time comes. So let's go ahead and jump into the modules of the ship. So with the build that I have thus far, accepting new points on the commander, right now we have the Brindisi has 203mm guns. They have a reload time of 17.6 seconds, as we've gone for a reload build with the modules, or upgrades, excuse me. 180-degree turn time of the turrets, 29.6 seconds, which we can get down a bit more. Maximum sap shell damage, 5,200, which we can increase. Maximum AP shell damage, 4,800. And we can also increase that, but we're going to talk about increasing that sap shell damage. Now, in terms of the hull, you have hull A, which means you have less survivability, less AA defense, and less maneuverability. So the hull A, you can see it's 40,000, and when you upgrade it, you go to 44,800. In addition to having the better AA rating and slightly better maneuverability. Don't really depend on the AA. It'll do all right. Tier 10 aircraft carriers, it's not going to do well in. Tier 8, you'll do okay-ish, but it's nothing to write home about. The torpedoes are fun. They are 95-second reload time, and they have a 13.5 kilometer torpedo range. So that means if you go for the stealth build on Brindisi, you can actually stealth fire these torpedoes, but they're incredibly slow at 56 knots. There's a lot of, most torpedoes in the game I think are like more 60 knots and above. So these are slow. It gives enemy some time to try to avoid these unless you're yellowing up on a target, then they're not going to be able to do so much. And they have a 13,900 damage per torpedo, and I'll pull up torpedoes, and it's a 2x4, so you get 4 on each side, but they reload every 95.0 seconds, but roughly a minute and a half, especially once you kick in Adrenaline Rush. And so I'm usually spamming these a lot, and just catching battleships and that off guard, because these torpedoes are so slow they don't really think of a cruiser torpedoing them. So it is fun to do that, but pay attention to me when I say you don't play this just for the torps, you play it for the guns. The torps are just this extra fun thing that you get to throw in. Now in terms of her gunfire control system, the stock range is 15.6 kilometers. You will be able to buff that up to 17.1, but you want to go for the hull B first, and then you go ahead and pick up the gunfire control system, because you just need additional health pool and a little better AA defense and maneuverability, because this ship is rather maneuverable. Now with her propulsion, she's 36.7 knots, but we throw on a Serum mic combat signal, which increases ship speed by plus 5%. We're up to 38.5 knots, so you are just really booking around, and you can definitely be playing with your propulsion and avoiding enemy salvos completely, so it's really fun to do that in the Brindisi. Now in terms of her upgrades, for the first slot we've taken the main Armaments Modification 1. Risk of main, these does two things. Risk of your main battery and your torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated, negative 20%. Main battery and torpedo tube survivability, plus 50%. And main battery and torpedo tube repair time, negative 20%. So this is actually quite nice, because this ship revolves mostly around its guns, but you get the added perk of your torpedoes having a better survivability, as well as a better chance of not incapacitating. It's kind of frustrating when your play revolves around yellowing this enemy battleship or cruiser, and then they incapacitate your torpedoes on that side. So that's really frustrating. So that's why I think this is the best of the ones here. AA sucks. The secondaries are blah. You don't need that. Magazine Modification 1. Risk of your ship's magazine detonating. You don't need that, because when you're playing ranked randoms, clan battles, you just take Judy Charlie combat signal, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. And as a fun fact, you can't play this ship in ops, but ships you do play in ops, tier 6s through tier 8, you can't detonate in operations, so don't waste your money in taking that. We also have spotting aircraft. This increases the action time of your spotter plane. It is a possibility to take, but I don't really lean towards it so much. This is really the one you want to take. For slot 2, you have Damage Control System Modification 1, or Engine Room Protection. You want Engine Room Protection because this ship revolves a lot around maneuverability and her speed and propulsion. So take this. It reduces the risk of your engine and steering gears becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Engine repair time, steering gear repair time, negative 20%. Damage Control System, that's not for Brindisi, just for other ships in the game. For the third slot, there's several options you can take. I have elected to take the Aiming Systems Modification 1, primarily for the maximum main battery shell dispersion of negative 7%. So when you take this upgrade, your maximum horizontal dispersion and your maximum vertical dispersion are being reduced by negative 7%. So that means you're getting tighter shell groupings with these amazing guns, which you have 12 in total. 12 203mm guns. So having the increased accuracy, I just really appreciate. And then you have the added bonus of the torpedo tube traverse speed, secondary battery firing range, and maximum secondary battery shell dispersion is reduced. So if you're kind of interested to see, you have 12 90mm secondary guns that reload every 4 seconds, and right now have a range of 7.3 kilometers. But their armor penetration capacity is 15 millimeters, so don't really do a whole lot. They're more like for setting fires. That's the only way you're going to set fires with the Brindisi. The other option that you could consider taking is the main battery modification 2. This improves your main battery traverse speed. Again, we're going to build into the traverse speed on our commander, so I don't feel there's a necessary need to take this, but if it drives you crazy and you want your guns, you're constantly shifting around, then you probably want to pick up main battery modification 2. But I think the golden winner for the third slot is the aiming systems modification, just to have that tighter shell grouping and the shells are going more or less where you're aiming. For the fourth slot, in my opinion, propulsion modification 1 is what you want to take. Time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating, negative 50%. Especially when you tie into that really nice speed of 38.5 knots, you can really be throwing the enemy team off when you're accelerating and deaccelerating and going full speed, especially if you're playing more at the 16 kilometer range, or you've popped your spotter plane and you're back at like 18 to 19 kilometers. You can make it really frustrating for them to accurately land shells on you. So this is what I would take. Secondly, you could take the steering gears modification 1, which reduces your rudder shift time, which right now is 10.8 seconds. So then essentially that means you're getting it down to 8 point something seconds. Pull it back up. You'd be getting it down to 8 something seconds. Probably like 8.6, 8.7, just spouting off the top of my head, not really sure. Yes. So then the fifth slot, I advise taking the concealment systems modification 1. Your ship's detectability range is reduced by negative 10%, squadron detectability range, negative 10%, dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship, plus 5%. So it means worse accuracy for enemy ships attacking, firing upon your ship. So that gets down our concealment to 13.6 by sea, 8.3 by air, and we're going to be able to get that even lower with the commander. So just hang in there till we get there. Now the other thing is you could consider taking steering gears modification 2. This is giving up concealment, and then this is kind of more of a lighthouse build per se. You're beginning to venture into those waters, and when I say lighthouse, just means you sacrifice concealment. You're seen from further away, but it does of course give you some really nice rudder shift time and steering gears repair time. But I don't really think that's what's best for Brindisi. There's a lot of opportunities you can do with the concealment, and I've thus far have really enjoyed having the concealment on Brindisi. Sixth slot, for me, the winner is the main battery modification 3. Main battery reload time, negative 12%. Main battery traverse speed, negative 13%. So that's what's getting our reload time with these guns down to 17.6 seconds. And without this, I can't remember if I said it was like 19 seconds. I can probably just use my trusty old calculator here. 19 minus 2.2. No, it's 20 seconds. 12. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, it's 20-second reload time with if you don't take the main battery modification 3, which is quite a jump up from the Amalfi. But of course, from Amalfi to Brindisi, you get an extra stern turret, a 4th turret. So being able to get that reload time down to 17.6 seconds is much, much more nicer. And you're really going to be getting to increase your overall damage per minute in the game. If you're asking about something else, I'm going to tell you no to all 3. They just don't really, in my mind, are the best at all for Brindisi. I mean, the other possible is the gunfire control system modification 2 to increase your range. But as I said, this ship plays best in the medium range, so let's say 12 to 16 kilometers as an example. Why would you be playing even further back? Excuse me, I need to take a drink here. Why would you want to play farther back is the real question. So this is going to improve your overall DPM in the game. You're going to have higher, more damage in game, so take main battery modification 3. Now in terms of her armament, so you don't have explosive with this ship, just the secondaries. So your primary armament is the semi-armor piercing. It's really effective against lightly armored targets. You know, I wrecked a Flint, a tier 7 American light cruiser with the whole semi-armor piercing salvo, as a lot of my armor piercing shells just did a lot of overpins, and my sap did a lot more damage. So the sap is really deadly against destroyers, because you just chew them up, and so it's just super nice overall. Armor penetration capacity 54 millimeters, 5,200 maximum damage, and your initial velocity of your shells is 950 meters a second, which is really good. So you have a flatter shell arcs. They're not really these high shell arcs like the American light cruisers or heavy cruisers as an example. So it feels a little more similar per se to the Russian cruisers in the game. Armor piercing, 910 meters a second. So the sap actually flies faster by just 40 meters a second. So it's not really that noticeable, but if you've ever wondered it, it's a little bit of a difference. And maximum damage is 4,800. Torpedoes, we've discussed already at length, and then you don't get the depth charge airstrike. You get just depth charges. So it's a little frustrating when you see the submarine and then you have to kind of go out of your way to get on top of them. Yesterday's video, when I was dealing with 2 submarines, you can see that, as we only got to depth charge one of them. The other we just finished off with our guns. So I'd like to have more of the depth charge airstrike, I think, for Brindisi, but the depth charges are okay. Because usually as a cruiser, you're not necessarily always engaging enemy submarines, maybe more your destroyers. In terms of consumables, you have a standard damage control party for cruisers, 5-second action time, reload time 60 seconds, so be mindful when you utilize your damage control party. At least you don't want to burn it too early if you only have, like, torpedoes knocked out or something. Or if you can go dark and then go ahead and use a DCP, then you can do so. Repair party, you start off with 3 of them. We can increase that. HP per second, 224. But if we throw the India Delta combat signal, which increases the amount of HP restored, and also, for planes, if you're playing CV, Italian CV apparently, 268. So you're able to heal more damage back, so definitely take India Delta. Action time of 28 seconds, reload time of 80 seconds, so that'd be a minute and 20 seconds. So that's pretty standard for most cruisers in the game of World of Warships. Now for your next slot, you have 2 options. You have the spotting aircraft, which is what I have. Main battery firing range plus 20%. Action time 100 seconds. Reload time 240 seconds. And currently we get 4 of them. We'll talk a little bit about spotter airplane, but this is nice, especially let's say the enemy team starts fleeing the flank, or you're having to cut away from a big enemy push. The spotting aircraft just helps give you that much better ability to land your shots more accurately at range. Of course, and if you don't get trapped by the 17.1 kilometers, always you have the spotter aircraft. Fighters, if you're playing like ranked or brawls, the fighter might come in more handy. I tend to equip a fighter more on ships when I'm doing a ranked of 6v6 or brawl 2v 3v3, and there might be an enemy aircraft carrier or the hybrid ships in the game. But you're not going to stop the first strike with a fighter. You're just hopefully preventing a second strike, if not a third strike. So spotting aircraft is the real clear winner, especially in randoms overall. Then you have the exhaust smoke generator, kind of one of the key features of this line. So this isn't a crawling exhaust smoke generator. This is a smoke generator that works if I'm flying 38.5 knots. So this reduces, it's like being in a smoke screen, a mobile smoke screen, and shoot, I wonder if they're putting in a new game update now. I didn't think about that when I was recording this. Yeah, I think they're doing that. Shoot, I should have done this video sooner. So I'm going to switch over online to WoW's shipbuilding. So give me just a moment. Okay, so here we are in the WoW's fitting tool. What's the name of this website? I'm spacing it right now. Just WoW's. Yeah. This is a website you can use to be able to test out different builds of the ship if you just want to see what it looks like on paper without having to actually invest in the purchase of different consumables. Or sorry, not consumables, the upgrades or commander skills. So I use this quite frequently, and I was toying around some things even before this video started. So we're going to be in this for the remainder of the video now, so I do apologize for that. That was a very abrupt. I had the updates download last night, and then it prevented me actually getting on the game earlier to play, and then it just keeps catching me off guard, so apologies for that. But now we're here and continuing on. So yeah, where were we? We were talking about the exhaust smoke generator. So yeah, so this, when you activate this, I think your gunfire penalty, if you're a 12.2 kilometer concealment build, is like 9.7 kilometers when firing from your exhaust smoke generator. So that is nice, but you just have to be mindful if there's like a destroyer or maybe a submarine that catches you out with your smoke firing penalty. So just try to be conscious of that. And it has a 180-second reload time and an action time of 40 seconds, which is quite spiffy in my opinion. So yes, let's go ahead and let's talk more about the, well, then at this point I actually would show you what I would like to take in terms of the combat signals, which this is a little bit harder to do because everything's not in the same order. Fire extinguishing time, and where's it at? That's secondaries, I don't really care for that. That's AA. Yeah, I take November Foxtrot. This helps your consumables to reload faster. Consumable action time. Yeah, but that's only, I think it only affects a few things. And then Sierra Bravo. Yeah, I have to check that out. Yeah, so something like that. Commander build wise, there's several things that you can do. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and put Luigi Sansonetti. He was the one that was featured playing on this ship in the video yesterday, and then the Solar Warrior game I had with Brindisi, because he has 2 enhanced skills and he has several talents, which I'll cover when I cover Venezia. I'll cover his talents. So there's like, honestly, there's like 4 to like 6 different builds you could probably do with the Brindisi, and each will vary ever so slightly depending on what you want to go for. I'll show you what I'm currently building for, and then we'll go from there, okay? So for a 10-point build, I'd say probably pick up the Grease the Gears to help your turret traverse turning time to be lessened. Is now I'm trying to find that. Yeah, so we can drop it down to 25.70 seconds, where without it's the 29.56. And we'd reference, you know, if that's really annoying you and you want to have it in multiple places. So if we did swap that out, we can get down to 22.35 seconds. But again, I prefer the accuracy, so then I just pick up for that here with the Grease the Gears, which increases our main battery traverse speed by plus, I think it's 15% for cruisers. So this is a little more hard to follow per se to an extent here on the this website, Wiles Fitting Tools. And then there's 2 ways you can go. I'm going to just show you what I'm doing thus far in terms of the 2-point skill. It's a priority target. It just really helps you to know how many enemy ships are currently aiming at your ship. So if you're detected, it'll just say detected, and then in this little box it'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and hopefully not more than that. Then you know you're leaving focus and you need to go dark and you disengage, or maybe you get spotted towards the beginning of the match and then all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 ships aiming at you, and that means there's probably a whole battleship line that's getting ready to fire on you. So maybe you want to pop your exhaust smoke generator as an example, or try to disengage and go dark, or use your maneuverability. Then for a 6-point commander, then I'd say pick up the Adrenaline Rush. It enhances the parameters for each 1% of HP lost. So this is like for your main battery guns are going to reload faster, your torpedoes are going to reload faster, your AA gets a slight buff. secondaries I think also go down slightly. So that's helpful, and that is going to kind of help contribute as you lose health to your DPM, which I don't remember if that actually gets switched around here, just with my AR alone. So we're going to be paying attention to this raw damage per minute number when we go further along here. Then for turn point commander, just go for the concealment system expert. The ship's detectability range goes down by -10%. So with a full concealed build, you can see it goes down to 12.2 kilometers, 9.7. I was correct when firing into smoke, and then if you get on fire, it's 14.2. And then they have there by air 4.6 after firing guns in smoke, and when on fire 10.45. So if I take that off, you can see how the numbers get changed around here. So that's 10 points build, and then 13 point build, I'd go for Superintendent to give you the additional exhaust smoke generator, the additional spotter, the additional heal. So then you have 4 heals. I've used all 4 heals up. I think I used all 4 heals in yesterday's video. So definitely you want that. So to me, this is kind of the key ingredients when you're starting off with a 13 point build. Now, spotter plane is going to be, or the eye in the sky skill is going to be a skill I talk about shortly. But 13 point build, then I'd say definitely pick up Gunfeeder. With Sansonetti, it's -60% shell switching time. A standard commander is -40%. Because there's sometimes that you do end up switching and you want that armor piercing salvo for a broadside heavier cruiser where maybe your sap's not going to do as much damage, or you're just going to get a lot of shatters with your sap. And even battleships too. So that's really the ideal time to be switching over to the armor piercing. So I do utilize this commander skill. Using it, it's in about every battle. I'm like switching shell types, just depending on how things going. But overall, the sap is what you pretty much go for most. So then at this point, if I'm going to show you kind of what I think is, it's the build I'm going for at this point in time. So 14 point commander, then going to an 18 point commander, 17 point commander is the survivability expert. So that increases our health pool from I think it's 44,800 to 48,850. So you're able to stick in the game longer, and you can actually, yesterday's video, this actually did help in making a difference in the game. So having the greatest survivability is quite nice in my opinion. And then the last 4 point skill, the 21 point commander, what I'm going for is the top grade gunner. So you can see that our raw DPM jumps from 212 damage to 231,000 DPM. Now this is a skill that you have the permanent effect of your secondary battery reload time being -10% and your main battery reload time of -8% upon being within the standard detectability range of an enemy ship. So that means you have to be, with our concealment, 12.21 kilometers. So that means we have to be within 12.21 kilometers of an enemy ship to activate this additional -8% reduction on our main battery reload time. And again, yesterday's video would be an example of that. The Solo Warrior game would be an example of that, where we actually could have gotten a pretty good amount of usage out of the top grade gunner skill, especially once you have Sansonetti because of his talent activating with the greater reduction in the reload time, which we activated in the Solar Warrior game. So you can have some spicy DPM going on here. Now, the other thing that you'll see if you follow some of the other World of Warships content creators, those who get the amount of experience in the game, they will also tend to give up one of these 3-point skills. For example, so let's say, for example, I gave up Survivability Expert because we went on Adrenaline Rush. We want the additional smoke, exhaust smoke generator. We want the additional heal, yada, yada, yada. I give that up and I go for the heavy HE and sap shells. You take this for sap shells since you don't have heavy HE shells. And your ship detectability with a main battery caliber of 149 millimeters and above is plus 15%, but your main battery HE and sap shell damage is plus 10%. So when I click on this skill, watch how the maximum damage changes here, and then how our raw DPM also changes. So we have 254,000, and we go from 5,200 to 5,720. So this means when you take this, that your penalty is your concealment. So then you go to a 14 kilometer concealment, or 14.04 kilometer concealment to be precise. So that's a bit of a bummer that you sacrifice your concealment. So this playstyle, you still want to take the concealment system, in my opinion, but this playstyle is more for if you're wanting to have greater damage games, is what I would say. And then you're kind of playing around the fact that you're pretty much always going to be lit to an extent. Of course, unless you go outside that 14 kilometer range and you're not firing your guns. Unless you're, spotted, of course, within 14 kilometers. So then this really means that the priority target skill has greater weight, it has greater significance, because you're going to be detected more, and there's going to be likely more enemy ships firing on you. So being able to be aware of when enemy ship may be targeting you, like a heavy cruiser battleship, is very helpful and very important in my opinion. So this is like the really strong DPM build. The other thing that you can do, if I take these two away, let's say I still want to keep survivability expert, I want to run with this build, is you could take radiolocation. Radiolocation is not a bad skill at all to take on Brindisi. This really revolves around you as a player. Do you really like having this to know where that submarine is surfaced near you, or that enemy destroyer that is around? And keep in mind our concealment's dropped back down to 12.2. So do you want that? For me as a player, out of all the games I've had in Brindisi so far, I've not once wished that I had radiolocation. That just tends to be more of my map awareness as a player, and understanding where enemy ships are, and having a rough idea where destroyers may be. So no, I've not really wished to have this, because I can usually try to predict your enemy's movements, which that comes with time in the game and what makes most sense, but you can never predict the potato, right? So this isn't a bad build to take here either. Now, I also say this because you could, for example, drop the priority target and then you pick up Eye in the Sky. So your spotting aircraft consumable cooldown time is negative 50%. So it goes down to, now with the combat signal, 114 seconds. And then your action time is reduced and as well. So instead of having the 100 seconds, I believe it is. Yeah, 100 seconds. You end up dropping down to the 50-second action time. And then this also gives you 2 additional spotters. So I think you get up to 6 spotter aircraft too. So this would also be a possible build option. Yeah, so that's kind of this 2-point skill you can be flexible with. I just appreciate having priority target. I think for most players, it's probably what you're going to want to take. So the build that I'm going for, to highlight this in closing, this is the build I'm going for now, that I'm building on Sansonetti, and have this. I don't have the 21-point Sansonetti yet, but this is what I'm going for. Secondly, you could go for RPF. You could switch between your priority targets to Eye in the Sky and do this as an example. Or you could go for the DPM build, but that means giving up your survivability expert and taking the heavy sap shells, right? So we can have that. And then, of course, if you want to play around with these skills, like let's say Adrenaline Rush isn't that big of a thing to you, and you want that, but I mean, if you're going for a DPM build, then you pretty much want to take your Adrenaline Rush. Yeah. So there's some different things you can play around with here. So it's really just up to you as a player and what you feel like fits your playstyle the best. So on that note, I probably have gone over 30 minutes now, so we need to cap this video on the head. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you subscribe, thanks so much. And let me know in the comments what you have on your Brindisi, if you have one, and what you have found has been beneficial to you as a player. So until next time, take care.